everyone, and welcome to the Thriving Relationship Show. I am your host, Christine Earthhart, founder of the Center for Thriving Relationships. And I am so grateful and delighted to have you here and to get to support you in experiencing more love, connection, and understanding in your relationship. And if you are someone who is passionate about personal and spiritual growth, and maybe your partner isn't so much, and you find that instead of growing together, you're really growing apart, and the conversations around it perhaps have become a source of conflict and maybe even resentment for one or both of you. So if that's the case for you, you're in the perfect place, because we have the most amazing couple that we are so honored to get to learn from today. So a big warm welcome to Sarah and Jonathan. So Sarah Jenks is an incredible coach and leader in the personal and spiritual development industry who is passionate about supporting women in forgetting who the world wants them to be, remembering who they are meant to be, and giving them permission to act on it. Yes, yes, yes. She has been featured in Forbes, USA Today, Martha Stewart, Glamour Magazine, Health Magazine, Parents Magazine, and has a large online following of women she inspires around the world daily. And I have sent people to Sarah for, feels like over a decade.
Aww.
Like clients have sent to her website and have just been following her amazing work. So we'll be sure to give you all the links, and they'll all be below. And then her amazing husband and partner in life, Dr. Jonathan Brajtbord, who helps professional men and fathers do the inner work required to have an intentional life, healthy body, and great relationship. And he is also a urologist. So you two are just what a dynamic match. And I know you've experienced your own transformation as a couple that I can't wait to learn more about. And now that you help other individuals and couples in making sure that like growth stays alive in a way that's really supportive for both of them. So a big warm welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us and doing what you're doing in the world.
Thanks, Christine, so much for having us. It's so fun to have a place where people are coming to talk about relationships, because sometimes, they're coming to us to, for Jonathan to learn about their penises, and for me to really be on their own path. And I'm so aware that the relationship that they're in is the number one block or opportunity for their own growth. And I encounter some resistance from people. They just don't always want to go there and talk about it. So I'm just so grateful to be here with you and with your community, so that
Thank you so much. So yeah, let's hear from the two of you. What inspired you you can share kind of individually doing the work that you're doing, and then how you've kind of woven it together. I mean, you still do your individual work, and how it's transformed in the context of relationship.
Yeah. Jonathan, do you want to tell them what it was like when we met?
Yeah, I think that's the most fascinating part about this, right? Is the fact that, when Sarah and I met, we were 21, 22 years old, right? So we've really grown up in lots of ways together and had different iterations of our relationship and of our marriage over the last, almost 20 years. Yeah, 17, 18 years. So, when we met, I was a college football player, senior in college, and Sarah was like, Miss Party planning girl on our smallest campus in school. And, we started dating about a month before I graduated college, and had to try to figure out who the hell we were at that time in that phase in our life. And then, what we want out of life then is so much different than what we want now. And it's been a really interesting and transformative kind of growth over the last 17 years to keep pace with that, I think. So,
yeah, I think the big thing that happened with us, and this is something that I see in relationships often, is that our marriage became a microcosm of the macrocosm of the challenges that men and women encounter with each other and our antiquated gender roles. And even though Jonathan at his core is a loving, equality-minded, modern man, and even though I am like a staunch feminist and super just like I center women's freedom, when we would be together behind closed doors, it was like being in a time machine to 1950. We just defaulted to these traditional gender roles. And because we were doing so much work around our career and our ambition, and I started doing work around my inner work, but there was no context for us to be doing this evolution work inside of our marriage. And so what ended up happening was I was growing very quickly on my own because I was in the personal development industry. And I really wanted to have a partner who could meet me there. And I wanted to, and our particular issue was that Jonathan was pretty edgy at home and explosive. And this is something we talk about all the time. So this is not,
it's an open book, like I said in the intro before hopping on live.
Jonathan was edgy and a bit explosive, and it wasn't the calm house that I wanted to be in. And what was happening was that a lot of his unprocessed wounding around childhood and also being in medical school and residency, him not having tools to understand what was happening in his inner world, were coming out at me. And then when we had kids, at the kids. So
right, and it was way easier for me to, right, like it's very easy for me to direct that frustration, stress, anger, overwhelm at Sarah or my kids than it was for me to understand what was going on inside of me to have then process and deal with it. So it was just coming out in these really unhealthy ways. And, that was a huge impetus for us to start doing the work more deeply together, but also for me to get into it for myself, right? Because we went to the couples therapy for years, right? Like I used to tell my residents, there's 45 minutes where unless it is a true emergency, you cannot call me, right? I am in therapy. This is my dedicated time to my wife. That was it. And it still I wasn't addressing the issues in myself. I was trying to fix the marriage without actually working on myself for a few years. Is understatement, but yeah.
And before we got into therapy, I was really asking Jonathan to do inner work all the time, and he was really resistant. He really didn't want to. And I think that was because it's super taboo for men to do inner work. And I was also asking in a way that was I'd be doing dishes. I'd be like, so I saw this book on Amazon and I feel like maybe you should read it. Where on the inside, what I was actually saying was, I freaking hate you. I am miserable. I'm ready to kick you out of the house. I cannot do this any longer. But because of my own programming around how I related to men, I didn't feel like I could say that. So my work, and I feel like a lot of the work for the women out there, is to learn how to be really honest about how we're feeling and really honest about the level of hurt that was happening on a daily basis, because a lot of us are just sweeping it under the rug. So when I finally picked up the rug and shook it out, Jonathan was like, oh, I'm in.
Yeah. I mean, look, in reality, it wasn't until you showed me the true emotion, right? How much I was hurting you, how sad you were, how, I could tell that you weren't happy. But for me, right, I needed something changed when you connected the emotion of it, right? That was a really big turning point for me, was when you were honest and vulnerable enough for me to see the emotion, that I'm like, oh shit, this is a real problem. And I better do something to address it. Otherwise, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. And that was a really scary thought for me.
Wow. I love what you are saying. So you've been on a long journey together. And I think that a lot of couples, right, there's so many seasons and chapters. We change so much over the course of a relationship. What first attracts us to someone, or who we are when we first meet. And so it's so easy just to get into so many outdated patterns, or patterns that are based on society or our upbringing, or all these old outdated kind of archetypes. And so you're so incredible for doing the inner work to consciously choose how you want to show up for each other. Because even if we play these roles out in the world, that's just really profound. Behind the scenes, which is the case for so many couples, we just can default especially when we're tired or stressed, those are the moments that we can just kind of, more unconsciously, go those places. And so this is so illuminating. So for both of you, it sounds like you, Jonathan, was like doing your own inner work. It wasn't just working on the relationship, but learning how to like process what was really underneath the emotions. Yeah, you want to dive in, and Sarah, well, of course, you want to hear about kind of your process, learning to own your voice and express your needs in a way that he could hear. So yeah, Jonathan, you go for it. I think this is
No, for sure. I mean, it's so interesting because so many men come into my world now, right? Like I always ask them before, like a retreat that I lead or on my program that I lead, it's like, why are you here? And the vast majority of men are here to improve their relationship, right? They want to improve their connection with their partner, and like the relationship is like the entry point. But the reality is that like you can't work on the relationship without working on yourself, right? And like most men don't get that when they start. I quickly like help them realize that or like make that a priority in the programs. But the reality is like the relationship was never going to be where I wanted it to be, or even where Sarah wanted to be, or where I wanted it to be, unless I was actually willing to do my own inner work for the sake of myself and the relationship. The relationship was a byproduct of it, but it had to be for myself first. And so yeah, it's been a huge process to kind of go along that route and to get guys to understand the importance of that over the last couple of years that I've been doing this personally. So
Jonathan,
you're doing that.
Oh, sorry, Christine.
You go, Sarah.
I have a question for Jonathan because I love wanting can you share about like what your priorities were for your life before you did inner work, and then how inner work helped you improve your own life? Like I'd love for you to share the before and after, because I get to see it, but I just think it's such a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's one of those things where like I see and feel the benefit now, but I sometimes forget what it was like before, right? And so, which is like, I think in some respects good. But look, I mean, the reality is that before I started doing all this work on myself, right? Like I was constantly overwhelmed. I had no outlet to express my overwhelm with, right? I was like unable to maintain like my integrity with my own words. Like I said I was going to work out and I wouldn't do it in the morning, right? And then what would I do? Like the mornings are like the perfect example, right? So like I wouldn't get up and work out. Sarah would get up and like do her like sacred start practice, which is like she's committed to. And then like I would get annoyed, but like I'm annoyed that Sarah is following through on her word, but like I'm going to take it out on Sarah or the kids, right? As opposed to like I'm actually annoyed at myself because I didn't follow through with what I say I was going to do, right? And then like the morning turns into a total shit show because like here you have like grumpy ass old dad walking around, like banging in the kitchen trying to make the kids lunches, like huffing and puffing, and like our kids are like, what is happening? And Sarah's like trying to keep this all together, and like it's a total shit show. And like that's not how we wanted to be. That's not how the environment that we wanted our kids to grow up in. And like I was looking to, it was everybody else's fault, right? It was like my kids melting down was the fault, or like it was Sarah was the fault. When the reality was, it's like I wasn't who I wanted to be and who I could be in the morning to like ground the family and like create this container that I talk about a lot in order to have everybody like really move through their day and start in a really powerful way. Like that's just like a small microcosm of like how I existed before. And like because I'm able to recognize that, like sure there are mornings where like I don't get up for whatever reason, right? But like now I can actually like ground myself and say, okay, like I made a decision, a choice, I'm responsible for that. It's not Sarah's fault. I'm not going to blame her. I still have to have the same capacity to deal with my 3 young kids in the morning and not blow up at them just because like I didn't get my own personal work in, which was a choice that I made at that time. So again, it's like owning your reality, owning your responsibility, and seeing the manifestations of that unfold. Does that answer your question, Sarah?
Yeah, sure. I also just love what you're saying too, Jonathan. I think this is such a powerful takeaway for all couples out there. It's just really easy. And again, I just think we do these things just innocently, unconsciously, that we get, annoyed or frustrated or resentful for our partner, like giving themselves the very thing that we're denying ourselves. And so that is such a great reflection and check it. Like when we're feeling annoyed with our partner, are we really just feeling annoyed with ourselves? When we feel betrayed by our partner, are we betraying something inside of ourselves? Just the amazing mirror partnership is. So
yeah, I mean, and like the reality is like what is true in the complaint, like what is true, and how do you like, how do you look back on yourself with the issue? Like, is there actually some validity in what your partner is reflecting to you in the annoyance, or like you're being annoyed? What's actually going on underneath it? What is really the issue, as opposed to the projection of it?
So powerful. Yes, I love that. So yeah, Sarah, does that kind of demonstrate this journey, the before, much more projection, and then learning, how to like really be so good to yourself and so true to yourself? It sounds like our capacity to love another person, right, is in direct proportion ultimately, and how we can really love and care and tend to ourselves at a deep level into what's in our innermost hearts and souls and lives. So I love how that's like you did the inner work and how it's showing up in the outer realms as well. But yeah, Sarah, is there anything in there that you wanted to be sure that he shared, that you witnessed?
What did I miss?
No, I mean, it's just such a great example about how it just shows up when we have awareness of our own inner wounding. It changes every single tiny moment, which really changes an entire relationship, which then changes an entire life, which then changes the lives of your children, which then changes the lives of your grandchildren. It has the most profound impact, and we just can't ignore it anymore. It's that important. And, the other thing that I would just like to reflect about Jonathan is that he's happy now. He wasn't a happy person before. And it's just so nice to be married to a happy man, someone who likes his life and is self-expressed, who has friends, who loves his work, who takes care of his body. It's just, that's all you want. And of course, like, our partners are going to have chapters in their lives when they're not happy because of some external circumstance. But, a parent dies or something's happening at work or we have a bad day. Like, there's space for that. But like, what is the general vibe of the person you're married to? Jonathan's general vibe was like pissed, for many years. And so it was hard for me. I would try to come in and be happy to like balance it out, but it's hard to hold that much dissonance in the frequency in the house. So not only has that impacted me, but it's just I love this man so much, and so it brings me so much joy to see him happy. And I think the other thing, the thing I want to say is that people always ask me, like, do men need to do inner work? And what I always say is, unless they came in an enlightened being already, like they've already maybe done tons of inner work in past lives, and they're treating you exactly the way you need to be treated, and they are like a team player in creating a life with you, then no. But like, for me, most of that I talk to are not treated well, and they don't have a partner to build a life with. Most of the women I work with, they have the big dreams. They have the aspirations. They want to go on adventures. They are thinking about the growth of their family. And that was definitely our story for a while. And I didn't want to just have a partner who was like along for my ride, and then like sometimes being annoyed by my ride. And so, but through Jonathan doing inner work, I all of a sudden I was treated really well. And then also we could be partners, in the dreaming phase. And then something else that I want to say is that when Jonathan started inner work, also, he then raised his standards for me. And that was a lot for me, because I was like, oh, I now can see all the ways that I am not showing up as my highest self, and the ways that I have been lazy in the relationship, and the ways that I was treating Jonathan that were not helpful. And Jonathan was just like, hey, you can't do that anymore. It's like,
Well, that's what we do, right? Like, we keep raising the standard, and we allow ourselves to meet the highest level as opposed to defaulting to the lowest level. right? Like so many, speak to men, not to the women, but like so many men I feel will live or exist at the lowest acceptable standard that their community is, right? Like that's like why the whole thing of, you are who your five friends are, right? Like you've created that container for you and you will kind of live within that range. In our relationship, Sarah set the standard here. And when I rose to meet it, like we kept doing this with each other up and up. And it just creates for a way better dynamic and a much more powerful relationship since we're doing that.
Yeah. And I had to get really comfortable with not being right all the time and not being the one who is in control all the time. Because I definitely had like I'm so much more evolved than you sort of thing going on that I liked. I mean, I also hated it, but like I had a part of me that liked that. And that I had to let that part of me die in order to really allow Jonathan to really meet me. And that was a thing.
Do you want to talk about that? Because I feel like some men who I'm working with now, as they're like trying to get on this path and they're trying to do the self-improvement, their wives keep like reminding them of that, how much further along they are than them.
That's so good.
I know. Well, I think there's two things. I think the thing that allowed me to actually get comfortable releasing this position of power in my relationship was us really getting to a pattern as Jonathan was growing to really be apologizing regularly for all of the hurt that he had caused and for not doing this sooner. Because I think what happens is men are doing the work, they're stepping up more, and both people think that like the past is now erased and like, shouldn't you just be happy that I'm now showing up and doing the work and now I'm calling you forward? And the women the reason why they don't want to give up their position is because they're still really angry and they haven't felt heard in their anger. And so Jonathan and I had a pretty regular practice of him holding space for my rage at him. And I would spend a lot of time just like swearing at him and crying and telling him all the things that I've been holding in for so many years. And Jonathan, that wouldn't have worked until Jonathan learned how to hold space and how to be a really strong masculine container, which he now teaches in his programs. But when I finally did that and I felt met and I felt held and I felt like Jonathan saw, and he was really appreciative. Thank you so much for all the work you've done for the past 15 years. Because if you hadn't done this work, I wouldn't have done this work. Our kids wouldn't be who they are. He really saw everything I'd done. He was grateful for the ways I called him in, grateful for the initiation. And because I felt so seen and I felt so heard, then he could call me out that I needed to have. And I just had to remember, like, I asked for this, because if you want an equal partner in all the ways, it means that you're going to be called out on your shit, and you can't be something. Jonathan and I always talk. We have a program called Modern Marriage, and something that we talk about all the time is: are you in like a coach-client dynamic? Are you in a mother-son dynamic? Are you in? We also talk about like the queen and like the knight, these sort of hierarchical dynamics. And if you're in one of those dynamics, you can't be lovers. You can't be partners. You can't like build a kingdom together. And it's just like, I had to, because I liked being in charge and I really had to let that go.
So that is so honest. And it's really such a gift, right? It's like once I surrendered to having a partner that we hold a high expectation, rather than just this idea of like unconditional love, which, is beautiful in its own way. The idea of like being securely attached and knowing someone that loves all of us. That's, what a gift. and someone that really calls us forward to being our best selves. And, I think your journey reflects so much this notion of like the very thing that our relationship needs to be its healthiest, strongest, most conscious, form is the very thing we need ultimately, if we're willing to accept the invitation to really grow and evolve ourselves. And, if we resist that, the pain it causes, and if we open to like accept that invitation, the growth that becomes available to us. And I just bow to you both for accepting that invitation in such a big, big way. And I'm curious, like you had that comment, Sarah, and about apologizing. This is, bless you. It's so powerful, I think, when it comes to repair, just for couples across the board. So I just want to highlight that, is that if we change, I mean, I've been there, I think we've all been there. Like if we change, we're like, okay, no, I've changed. Let's just move on with it, right? Like things are different now. And to be willing to face into all of the pain, and to do that and trusting that as we go in, lean into that, it's actually not making the pain bigger. It feels like, oh no, I have to face that. It actually is like setting it free. And letting our partner be deeply witnessed on what they've experienced. Then it's like, okay, you do get it. Now my protector doesn't need to keep being like, no, but that happened, to like make sure that it's not going to happen again. It's like, you get it, you deeply get it. And that's where, so just, anything. Jonathan, did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I mean, and there's different layers to it too, right? So it's like I thought I had worked through all of that, and then like something else would come up that would kind of stimulate me to like remember a memory of like, oh shit, like I remember how I used to be, or oh shit, like I remember how I used to say those things to Sarah. Like I would stop like, I'm so sorry, right? Like I would say, I'm so sorry. It took me so long. I'm so sorry. This is how it used to be. And yeah, I think the consistency is really big, right? Most, myself included in this, like apologize once, okay, we're good. We're gonna move on now, right? And it's just like, no, right? There was a lot of built up issues that were there for so long. And it took the right time and took consistent apologies, and it took the consistent me just showing up to allow Sarah to feel into the sadness and the hurt that was there. But we both understood the importance of that. I didn't really understand it at the time. I kind of do now much more, but I just knew that there was a lot of anger that needed to come out. And I just kind of intuitively felt that unless that kind of came out, that we wouldn't be able to keep building what we both wanted. And it took some time for Sarah to get through that anger, and it was really hard. Like I remember being like, whoa, where did this come from? Right. And then hard to face like that I was the source of a lot of that, was another really big layer for me to get through. But we were able to, and that's why I think, we do what we do now. We have the relationship that we do now is because we're able to move through that. So yes, it always feels hard when you're moving through it, but like the other side is so worth it to have that kind of true intimacy and that true connection on the other side.
And I love that. Any wisdom, like for couples to choose like right timing or to create a container, because I think this part is big, is especially if emotions have built up over time, just trying to develop new patterns, it's not going to resolve that. Like we need to have these sort of clearings. And so kind of for both of you, any wisdom you have to share to other couples when you're, the one that's kind of witnessing, hearing, as well as the person who's really expressing it, just to set couples up for optimal success. Because of course, if we don't do it intentionally, it might not go quite as planned.
Well, it always comes out, right? If you don't do it intentionally, it'll always come out in one way or another. And that's like whether that's over drinking, overeating, numbing out, an affair, you name it, right? Like the emotion will come out. It's like, how is it going to come out? What is the product that it comes out in? You want to start, Sarah, or no?
Yeah. So it's a really tender thing. And I think it's really important that couples have holding around it, because it can create rupture if not done correctly. So I really think it's important for men first to really learn and be initiated around how to hold space for women. And that's why I'm just so grateful that Jonathan's doing the work that he's doing, because that's really what he teaches. Like, how do you be the stable force? How do you be the mountain, the rock that's like in the rushing river of the feminine, and just like really hold center? and be that safe, still place, because women have had millennia of men coming at us with their anger and attacking, and we cannot receive that from our partner, period. And so if you're, we're talking about heterosexual couples because so much of what's happening inside of male-female couples is generational trauma and this inherited epigenetic changes in our DNA that are causing us to act out these certain patterns in our marriages. So it's really important that they have training and that they can feel the depth of their own, stability. And then you have to really talk about it and make a plan and set sacred space, and also know that it's in service to moving forward. And it's in service to creating a deeper, more loving relationship. You have to, just like you said, I love the word clearing. You have to release the past. You have to let something die in order for something to be reborn. So, when I always talk about, sacred feminine cycles, we need to compost all of the hard feelings, all the things that didn't go well in order for new life to begin. But I think the most important thing is that women need to know that their male partner is going to sit there and really hold them. And something Jonathan always says is, what else do you got? When I'm totally done, when I feel like I'm done, he's like, what else do you have? Just bring it some more. And it's the best.
That is incredible. Yeah, that right there. And for sure, again, I'll put the links below, but follow along. I've already sent your Instagram page, Jonathan, too.
So
many tips for men.
Yeah, so I think like learning how to be in the physical and emotional discomfort when your partner's coming at you, right? And some guys are like, oh, like you just want me to sit there and take it. It's like that's is not what this is about, right? This is not like you getting bulldozed. This is not like you being weak or, it's like that's like the perverse total opposite of what it is that we're talking about, right? So what I try to help guys do and teach guys to do is literally to like root and ground down so they feel the stability, they feel the groundedness of the earth. And again, it's these visuals of like the rock and the swirling waters and how can you remain that still calm point, right? And we talk about like posture, right? Like if Sarah and I are having a conversation and like I'm slouching like this, like that's such a different energy that we're giving off. And like when I'm upright, sitting straight, like looking at Sarah, like I'm unshakable at that point, right? And so it's like our roots, our ground, like our posture, our eye contact, and yeah, just inviting it all and, knowing when your limit is and then being like, okay, like I can take more or like, you know what, I'm good. Like here we're set. And then like, let's come back another time and visit it again. Right. And so it's just being aware of that. And so often men will react as opposed to like pausing and responding. Right. And like this space holding is like not a time for either. Right. It's just a time to like bear witness and to listen and feel what it feels like to have all that coming at you. Because again, it's all there. It's all in there. And it'll come out one way or another. And like, how awesome is it that from a man, you get to not control it, but like guide it in like a really healthy way so that something can be cleared, something can be processed, and something else can be reborn on the other side. So small progress.
That's the bravest thing. I'm so grateful you guide men and how to do that. And I'm so glad you acknowledge that of like kind of the myths or the stories we could have around it. And it's just like so liberating. I have the awareness with Brett and then the couples we work with, like, it's not that we're like revealing any secrets here. Like our partner is already aware of these things. Like us, being willing to own them is not giving anything away. Like it's already there. And I find there's actually so much ease. I witness this when I'm supporting couples and in myself, like when we're in our defensiveness, like that's a way more painful. Like when we're trying to like, invalidate or make our partner wrong, or it's like, oh my gosh, we can just be like, yep. Oh, yep. I did that. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Yeah. like that's actually, it's like water, like to be rooted. I love that you bring in the earth element. So what good news that actually hearing these things, if you just like allow it, is I find, or you found, is like actually so much easier for both of you. We can move so much more quickly through things. So you demonstrate that. Yeah. Yeah. So any words of wisdom that you would share with like your younger selves? Like, of course, it's always like perfect timing that these things happened, like when you had your kind of turning point moments when you did, and for other people on the journey. And Sarah, you talking about like expressing your needs more, like when you first realized like I need to start speaking up, and Jonathan, you started doing your inner work. Like anything you would say to somebody else or to your younger selves that maybe would have been the catalyst a little bit sooner.
You know what's so funny? No one's ever asked us that question. It's amazing.
I love the question.
I mean, I would probably get into couples therapy a lot sooner. Like before, I think that we should have really done a huge round before we got married and before we had kids. I think that really we created this course, Modern Marriage. What we really want is for people to read it before they get married. Because we go into marriage because so much is unspoken. It's not, like you're one of the few people who's like really doing the work to talk about conscious relationships. It's not really part of the normal everyday vernacular yet. And we just blindly went into all these unspoken agreements. So I wish we had clearer verbal and written down agreements around who was going to be making money and who was going to be raising the kids and, how it was all going to work. Because sort of what happened was I got pregnant by surprise and Jonathan was in residency, and all of a sudden we just sort of realized that I was going to have to be the primary breadwinner and the primary parent. I think if we had sat down and were very looked at our budget and looked at our timeline and looked at Jonathan's schedule, we maybe would have been a little bit more careful, or I would set up more support.
Right.
So much was just unspoken, and then we just fell into this pattern where I was not ready to be the primary breadwinner and the primary parent. It was awful. And nothing any woman should ever have to do. And so I just wish we had really clear agreements sooner. What about you, babe?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think just the foresight to have some intention around our relationship, right? So much things just kind of happen because they happen. It's the right time, or it's the next thing to do, or but now we put so much energy and effort into what type of experiences we want to have, what type of parents we want to be, what type of husband and wife do we want to be, what all of that effort and energy has been so beneficial to our relationship that I wish we had done that a lot sooner, as opposed to just kind of going along because it was what we knew, right? What we were supposed to do. So that's one aspect. And I think for me personally, I would tell myself life doesn't have to feel so hard, right? I don't have to suffer. So much of my own, I was just a grumpy asshole, and for no apparent reason. I had all this unprocessed stuff I had to deal with, but it doesn't have to feel so hard. It doesn't have to feel so heavy all the time. So younger self, just remember that.
Such wisdom. And I just so appreciate how open-hearted and authentic and humble you are about your own journey. So it feels like living with intention on the front end, getting clear together. And I have a feeling, yes, the two of you do that a lot now. So it's always so inspiring to hear about couples and their different practices, just the simple everyday ones or other kind of rituals, or what do you do to keep your marriage strong now in any of the ways you want to share?
You want me to go?
Sure.
So one thing, can I share about what we've been doing after bedtime?
Yeah, of course.
So one thing I love is really looking at the soul path of somebody. And I really believe that Jonathan's soul came in to be a healer and a medicine man. But he like looked around at 16 years old and was like, where are the healers and the medicine man? Oh, they're physicians. So Jonathan went on to be an incredible surgeon and work in men's health. And he's been exposed to ceremony and some earth medicine and being in more ceremonial space. And so, and just like took to it. And, you know, the first time that we were sort of doing medicine together, I'm like, I'm a priestess. I'm going to be so good at this. I got it. And I was a mess. And Jonathan was just like one with the earth. I'm like, okay. So Jonathan was initiated in this practice called hape, which is just ceremonial tobacco. It's like totally legal and very gentle. And so he's been like holding space for a hape ceremony every night after the kids go to sleep. And for me, and then he does it for himself. And it's been so beautiful for me as a priestess who holds space for thousands of women all the time. To have my husband hold space for me is really a gift. And so we're just doing next level stuff over here.
Seriously, can you give us a little window, like as much as you want to share, into what happens in this hape ceremony?
Want to share?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, so hape is just like, it's a tobacco that's ground down. It has different herbs in it as well too. And so it's a plant medicine that's very gentle, but it's supposed to like wake up parts of your brain that have been asleep. And so it's inhaled through the nose, and it kind of lights up the difference. The vasodilator lights up different parts of your brain, and it's really quick. So like we sit face to face, 10-minute, just not even 5 minutes for us, just kind of grounding, breathing together. And then we'll do the ceremony, and it's all about like, what are you releasing? And you take some of it, and then what are you letting go? You take the other part of it. Sorry, what are you releasing, and then what are you calling in? What are you releasing? What are you letting go? And then what are you calling in? And it's a way for us to both sync up energetically, as well as what we are wanting for our life, what we're releasing, what we're calling in, and it's beautiful. I mean, the whole thing takes, I don't know, what, 20 minutes?
20 minutes.
But like you feel the connection, feels it's like we've been spending a couple hours together. So it's a way for us to sync up really quickly, really deeply, that doesn't involve numbing out, that doesn't involve alcohol, that doesn't involve, mind altering substances and illegal things, right? It's a way for us to connect that's really grounding, really deep, and really powerful. So
thank you for inviting us into that a little bit more and sharing about that. And it really speaks to how like quality over quantity, because I think so many of us in our individual lives, it's like life is so full. And then couples, it's like a miracle. Couples feel like when they can find time together, like I don't have time for a thriving relationship. And this is such a perfect example to show like 20 minutes, I'm sure transforms your day and your connection, and you do that every day. So good news to everyone out there that you don't need these vast amounts of time. It's just living with more meaning and intention. Yeah. Adding the magic.
Yeah, adding the magic, adding that small doses, it feels like it's like a big effort, but the reality is it's really not. The time is really short when you get there to it. So.
And I almost always don't want to do it. And it's a really great opportunity for John to be like, you know what, babe, you don't have to do it if you don't want to, but I really think you're going to feel great. Even just come sit with me on the couch. And so, because for me, I'm just like guiding everybody all the time in my work and guiding the kids. And I'm very much in charge in so many different parts of my life. And so to have this really be, and really almost all the time when Jonathan and I are together, he is just like taking the wheel, and it's really great.
Oh, you two are so special. I keep getting chills as you're sharing these things. Just wow. Really, it's just undeniable the intention that you have poured into how to show up for each other in ways that just open your hearts to one another and bring out the best in each of you and allow you, it sounds like, to even balance out, right? Like you're in the medical world, Jonathan, like getting to come home and be in your emotions and kind of guide these ceremonies together. And Sarah, you're like leader and facilitator and guide, and to get to be held and guided, and just how attuned you've become to one another and how to harmonize, which takes, it's a learning curve, I think, for all couples. And it's like, you just offer such hope for couples. This isn't like, oh yeah, you were just perfectly compatible and you just do these wonderful spiritual things together and your emotions. Like, relationships are consciously, intentionally created, and we can create them. And look what becomes possible when we do. So I love asking people, it's the Thriving Relationship Show, and you can each share something different, but I love asking people, like, what is a thriving relationship to you?
For me, it's about creating just a really special, unique, crazy adventure together. Because I just knew, I had this moment where I just realized I did not want to have a normal life. And for me, having a thriving relationship with Jonathan is him also realizing that he didn't want to have a normal life. And we got to create something really special and like super extra and over the top together.
Makes my heart sing. I love that.
There's nothing normal about how we are trying to do this dance of life. That is very true. I think what feels our relationship to me really is two people who not only support each other, but also are able to kind of stand on their own in lots of ways, right? Like, I love that Sarah travels so much, and then I have the kids, and I love that Sarah supports me in my work, whether that's, as a physician or doing men's work stuff. And she's like, yeah, I got you. Right. And so it's a relationship that, like, we both support each other individually, and we support the couple, right? Like, there was a time earlier this year where we realized, like, that we hadn't prioritized our relationship. We had no travel for the two of us to get, like, we had no way to get away. And we're like, can't do that. What has to shift? What has to change? Like, it was our mistake that we didn't put that number one. Like, we quickly moved everything else for to prioritize that. And so looking for the win-win in the situation, not in competition. And that has been a big one for me, learning through Sarah over the years about what is the win-win situation? Not like one person wins, one person suffers, but what is the kind of sacred third there for both of us to be? And I think the more you hit that, the better thriving relationships can be. So.
Oh, it's created such a dynamic relationship. You both get to be your whole, fully expressed selves, and then together, you can bring, like, that's where the juiciness is. I'm so celebrating what you have created and this journey that you're on, and how it's just rippling to just transform and inspire so many. So let's hear, where can people learn more? What do you have coming up? How can they follow along on your individual journeys, your couple journey, learn from you, all the things?
Yeah, so I think the best place to start would be to go to modernmarriage.us. And is it us or we? Well, Jeff.
We'll put the link in below.
It's us or we. And we're actually coming out with a self-study version of Modern Marriage. So it's a really amazing program. Such a great thing for people to go through.
Do you want to give them a little backstory and history on what the program was and what we're looking for?
Jonathan and I were trying to repair. We went to a lot of couples courses and retreats, and we couldn't find a couples coach who had been married since they were 21 and had kids together and, like, gone through the whole thing, because it was a unique journey for us. And so we decided, it's us. And so we created a program called Modern Marriage, and we've run it live many, many times, and we're super excited to release it as a self-study. So it's just really approachable for people. And I think that's the best place to start. And also, you can follow both of us on Instagram. Christine, I'm sure you can leave the links, but we're both showing up there every day, and it's a really great community. And if you're a woman who wants to be in a spiritual community, my program Holy Woman is always open. And it's a really great place for you to come to land, to experience new moon ceremonies. And we do a lot of liberation work through integrating the sacred feminine into our everyday lives. So if you're having problems speaking up, telling your truth, really thinking about what you want and really stepping into your power, if you're playing small, that's the place to go. And then you want to
Amazing.
Yeah, for sure. So for me, I mean, I think Instagram is a place to get kind of like the daily, kind of this type of work from my lens, from my voice. I run online program for men. We've run it. This is the fourth time we're doing it. I've done at this point, we have over 100 guys that have come through the program. There's 40 guys in this round, which is phenomenal. And so we're kind of midway through this course right now. We're going to be releasing, I'll do it again in the fall. And then every February, we'll have an in-person, probably 3-day now retreat on our land in Massachusetts, which is all about kind of working with the elements and being physically uncomfortable in the cold of Massachusetts. So.
Oh, bless you both for your phenomenal offerings. We will be sure to link to all of that. And I have just loved every second of getting to connect with the two of you. What a treat. And I just, I can always like feel into people tuning in and how much this is going to inspire couples to see what they can really create, that like no matter where they are, if they feel like they really have grown apart and their needs are unmet and just feel unhappy, like, oh my goodness, look at you now. Like you're both just thriving individually and together. Congratulations. And thanks for modeling what's possible, and just so grateful. Thank you all so much for tuning in, just beaming a whole lot of love to everyone on your journey. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Christine.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Want more support for your relationship, or want to become trained as a certified relationship coach to help other couples? We warmly welcome you to head on over to centerthrive.com. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to see you next time on the Thriving Relationship Show.